Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. We have a very special guest today, Diane Osgood. How are you?
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
You should be pleased to be right where you are at the moment. You're in the south of France. I'm so envious. Good on you. How's the weather there?
It's a beautiful, crisp morning. It's very nice.
Mm,
Mornings still are here fresh, and by midday, it's getting pretty toasty, but
yes,
mornings are delicious.
I love the southern part of France. It's my favorite part of the world, I must admit. If I won the lotto, I would hire a super yacht and take my whole family on a cruise of the Mediterranean along that southern part of France. It's just spectacular. Now, getting back on track here as I daydream, Diane, you are a pioneer in corporate sustainability and human rights. You have over 30 years' experience in helping companies create ethical, climate smart products. You've advised global leaders from President Bill Clinton to the Vatican and led sustainability efforts for Richard Branson. Through your consultancy, Osgood Consulting, you help businesses tackle climate and human rights challenges. Wow, what a portfolio you have there. So, Diane, your journey into sustainability began in the forests of Kalimantan. I'm presuming I'm saying that correctly. Watching orangutans in Indonesia. Can you take us back to that moment and tell us what shifted in you when you're in Indonesia?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was in Indonesia as a volunteer working in the Tanjung Puting National Forest at a place called Camp Leakey, working with the primatologist Baruta galdicus. And the reason I was there, because as a young girl, I was fascinated by the origins of humankind. And then as in my early 20s, I found this opportunity to volunteer at the Orangutan Research Center with one of the three original primatologists that Louis Leakey set up. So the first being Jane Goodall and the late Diane Fossey, and the third to study orangutans, Baruta galdicus. So it was an honor. It's still,
Mm,
I consider one of my great honors of my life is that I got to
wow.
volunteer for this primatologist. And so while everybody was excited to go into the forest every day and try to track wild orangutans, which by the way is very hard work, I found myself in kind of after that, my shift in the forest trying to track them and taking notes. I came back and would cool off by the docks on the edge of the river. Now, this is deep into the forest. The only way to get around is by rivers. And so it really was the equivalent of the highway or the rural road. And I'd sit there and I'd watch huge logs, pieces of massive trees float down the river. And then occasionally a boat with people kind of managing the wood as it floated down. We'd often hear chainsaws in the far distance when we were out in the field. And I just realized that deforestation was challenging and putting at risk these magnificent animals and the livelihoods of the people
Mm,
around. But they weren't doing it for fun because it's really, really hard work. And I realized they're doing it because someone's paying them to do
mm,
it. And they're selling the wood to consumers who are buying products made of that tropical rainforest. And if they didn't buy it, if no one bought that timber, they would stop cutting down the forest. Now, that is a super simplistic
yes.
insight.
Yes.
It's a little more complicated than that, but actually, fundamentally, it still holds. What we purchase sends those signals to make more of that.
Hmm.
And so, yes, if overnight everyone stopped buying products made from tropical timber, a
Hmm.
lot of deforestation would come to a halt very, very quickly once that signal reached that end. And that basic insight has driven my career ever since.
Hmm. Wow. And you're so right. The supply is there because a demand is there. No demand, no supply. Makes total
Exactly.
sense. That's what economics is based on.
You got it. And that's
Yes.
why I left after that experience. I left my rather comfortable job as a banker and retrained in environmental economics.
Yes. So that realization led you to earn a PhD in environmental economics at the London School of Economics, What was that path like for you, making that career transition? Was it a difficult one?
You know, sometimes we have these moments in our life where we feel unstoppable and
Yes.
and determined. And it
Yes.
was that. I didn't
Mhm.
blink twice about leaving an extremely well-paid, comfy job and taking on this huge challenge of going back to do my master's and eventually my PhD
Mhm.
in a pretty competitive, intellectually competitive environment.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever worked as hard as I did for my master's.
Mhm.
PhD after that was a little bit easier, but
Really?
it was a thrill. And again, I just had that unstoppable energy. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I was going to do the work to accomplish my goals.
Mm. I've done a PhD also, and it is hard work, but when you know your why, it really drives you. And that was the thing for me also. So I totally resonate with what you just, your experiences of doing that hard work. As I said earlier, you've worked with some of the biggest names, Fortune 100 companies, the Vatican, Virgin. What's it like to bring sustainability to those powerful rooms?
Well, the first part of my career, you know, from about the early 90s, well, the mid 90s up until about 2010-ish, the work was really about explaining why it mattered.
Hmm.
You know, I look back at that period, and it was the why phase. Why would a company want to improve its environmental performance? Why should they change what they do to protect climate, to protect biodiversity?
Hmm.
Why should they take the efforts to ensure that labor rights and human rights aren't abused in the process of making their products? It was why? And then, you know, we kind of laughed at the time, but it almost felt like an overnight success, you know, 20 years in the making, that suddenly companies really got it. The investment markets understood, the markets start to understand that companies with strong performances in these things would outperform those that weren't scoring well. And I think that's because it's a sign of better management. But indeed, it suddenly shifted to how.
Hmm.
And so then it was the conversation in those rooms was about strategy. It was about
Right.
what strategy, what goals, what milestones, and then how to operationalize that. So it's really kind of two parts. And now I think we're entering into a third era, which is all political and policy issues aside, fundamentally, more people, more end consumers desire products that are made in a way that's better for people and better for the planet.
Hmm. And what do you think is driving that shift in consumers? Is it awareness, or is it people are worried about their own health and well-being, the well-being of the planet? Where is that drive coming from?
All of the above. It's coming from multifacets. There's some pretty strong research that shows in the US, quote unquote, sustainability, kind of, it's a mushy word, it needs to be defined. But anyway, the environmental performance of a company that makes the products is in the top three considerations always of what they purchase. It may not be number one, it may not be number
Mhm.
two, but it's number three. And sometimes it cycles up to number one, you know, depending on conditions and price and things like that. So most consumers will keep price and accessibility in slot number one, number two, and then sustainability in three, but sometimes they'll shift it up. And what that tells us is that if sustainable products become known as price competitive and known as accessible, so people know how to find them and feel good about that and understand that it's authentic, it's real, it's not greenwash, then we'll see an explosion in demand for these types of products.
Mhm. When you first started standing in front of some of these big players, such as Virgin, such as the Vatican, and you were sharing what you had to discuss with them in terms of sustainability, how receptive were they? Were they looking at you as, okay, how's this going to affect our bottom line? Or were they welcoming and open to the idea of saving the planet and doing better in terms of sustainability?
It really depended on the time period. As I explained, there was kind of the why period and then the how period, and also the actual organization and the leadership. Some companies really embraced this early on. I was a consultant to the C-suite of a Fortune 50 company, so a ginormous company that has subsequently been broken up into many parts. But that CEO was a very, very powerful person in the world and had seen that what we call eco-efficiency, so saving because we're saving in energy and we're doing other sorts of things to save costs, was very, very impactful on not only his bottom line, but also his employees' morale, and kind of people were getting excited about this. So he embraced this. And I remember I just learned that they bought a seed company in, I believe it was Zambia. And I approached him and I said, you know, that you've just taken on an HIV burden, and that there's an opportunity and I think a responsibility here to really ensure the right to those workers for good medical care, and to ensure, I mean, it's in your interest, but it's also it's a fundamental human right. And we want to make sure that you're in line with that. And he was like, he got it and immediately put me in touch with the people who, much to our contentment, was already on the issue. It's just that they'd taken care of it and they didn't bother to tell the CEO because he's a busy guy, and they didn't need to say like, hey, but it's because that was the company culture.
Yes.
So that company was very easy. It was cultural. It was led from the top, and it was really about the how. Once we got them to that point, once we got the board, the C-suite and some of the board to that point. Other companies, it's a much harder journey. It really depends on the makeup of the C-suite, and I think the board more and more, specific industries, and their time frame. When a company's 150 years old, it's a little easier to talk about a longer time frame than when it's a startup or when it's only got 10 or 20 years underneath its belt.
Yes, yes. And you have a new book, Your Shopping Superpower, and it's something most people don't consider, and that is the impact, including myself, to be perfectly honest, the impact of what we buy. What inspired you to write the book, and why is it so important right now?
So I've been doing the work with companies for close to 30 years, and I just took a step back during the COVID period where I had some more time to kind of reflect, and I realized, we've been practicing supply side economics. We've been trying to help companies make better widgets, better things. And if we had succeeded, then we wouldn't be in the situation we are now with the world and the state of the environment and workers' rights. So maybe a different approach was necessary. Then I remembered, and I felt my way back to that basic first impulse sitting on the dock in Camp Leakey, realizing, we've forgotten the demand side. And that's always been kind of in the realm of the marketing world and the corporate communications world, and parts of a company's aspect that I just hadn't embraced. And so I realized that, to me, it's a language that I understand what a company makes and how they communicate that. But so many of my friends were asking, hey, Diane, I need to buy a new pair of jeans. Like, what should I look for? Which brand's best? And hey, I see you got, whatever that is. How did you make that decision? And so I was always kind of running on the side, a little informal gig of doling out, specific brand advice. And I realized that there was a need for understanding how it is that we as shoppers can easily identify products that are better for the planet, better for people, better for our communities, and better for our own health. And so those are the 4 aspects that I cover. And fundamentally, it goes back to my basic insight, which is we are the economy. What we buy, I love to say, where the shopping goes, the world goes, or the economy goes.
That's so true. The buck ends with us, essentially. We create that
and it
demand.
Starts with us.
Yes.
Yeah, it starts with us, right?
We
start the chain. We start the chain.
Yes, absolutely. And you talk about spending with your values. What does that actually look like in practice? And how do we go about identifying our core spending values? What are they? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is it comes from a sense of the world, the type of world that we want. And everyone's values are a little bit different. And I'm not in the business of changing people's values or changing people's attitudes about these things. My approach is that if you have a value for equality and equity and want to ensure that people are treated well at a very basic level, great. Here are some things that you can do to change your shopping so that you put that energy out into the world, that you indicate to companies that you value that they treat their workers well. And you will continue to buy their products and not support companies that haven't made the effort to do so. Because I value that workers everywhere in the world are treated fairly, meaning fair pay, non abusive, not dangerous. Same thing for the environment. Someone may value nature and conservation. They may have a deeper understanding and really value the efforts to reduce climate change and its negative impacts on everyone. They may value the oceans, the idea of the oceans and that magnificence of it, and therefore be motivated to try to reduce plastic pollutions. And if those are your values and those are the things that you feel deep in your heart, here are some really specific things you can do. Same logic. And similar for our family's health. If we value our own health and we value that of our family's health, we probably don't want to bring home products that we know have potentially harmful toxins in them. Again, here are 3 simple things you can do, or 10 simple things you can do, make shifts very slowly over time.
So we're talking about sustainability, not only from the planet, from that point of view of climate change, we're also talking about the people in those manufacturing hubs. And we're also talking about the impact on our own health. So there's three different areas when we talk about core values. And I know we talked about this in a meeting that we had. And I know for many people, they don't know where to start and they feel powerless because they think, how can I, as an individual, start to create change? Because change needs to happen on a bigger level. But, and even having the knowledge and being educated, let's use my shopping as an example. I love to shop at Zara. And I occasionally will buy online places like Shein and Temu because I can get little knick-knacky things and maybe things that go under sweaters really cheaply, just those easy, quick things that they don't have to be a fashion statement. What about those types of places? Because they are very, very popular.
Yeah, fast fashion is popular for a reason, which is it's inexpensive. It can be a form of creativity to be able to buy a different color or 6 different colors of the same thing.
Yes.
And it's easy, it's accessible. So it has those first 2 points, right? Price and accessibility, and then 3, which is trends. And 4, I think self-expression also kind of goes in there because fashion is so related. I mean, it is our self-expression. And that's fine. I'm long past judging or getting involved in kind of those types of conversations because we value what we value, and that's fine. However, if you value the rights of workers to be treated well and the environment, so reduction of waste in this specific case, you may want to make some changes. You may want to start to reduce how much fast fashion you purchase and use your money to make an investment.
Okay.
Because fast fashion drives a huge waste issue. So
really,
fast fashion is a massive cause of drives about 6% of climate change, of greenhouse gases that promote climate change, and creates unfathomable amount of waste. And particularly fabrics that have synthetics in them, polyesters and things like that. They don't
Yes.
degrade.
Yes.
And so they end up in ginormous waste heaps, either in landfill, and then landfill gets leached into the ocean. And there are plenty of documentaries. It's, you know, easy to educate yourself about the downsides of the real serious waste problem from fast fashion. And so, you know, I hear a lot of arguments about cost and about accessibility. And a friend of mine has this really clever way of dealing with it, which she goes back over 2 years because she's got all of her bank statements and she figures out the total of what she actually spent, not what she thinks she spent. She looks at her bank statements and figures out what did she spend last year and the year before on fashion. And she goes, okay, no, it's fine. Those are your choices.
No.
But now you know how much you spend. So
Oh, yeah.
set yourself that budget for the following year or the following next 12 months and shift to more to pieces that you're going to wear for longer that were made in a way that is a little less harmful to the environment and to the people, and start the shift that way.
Yes.
Because the longer we wear things, then the less waste it generates.
Okay.
Most people in the West wear a piece of clothing less than 7 times or less.
Oh, no, I'm better than that. I am
sure
better
you
than
are.
that.
And it's again, it's like no guilt, no shame. Guilt and shame just kind of doing it. It's just if you value these things, here's some ways, here's some tools, here's some, like, go have fun with it. Go figure out what you have spent. It's quite educating.
Yes.
And then think about, well, if I'd spent that on, maybe I'm going to give myself that budget, and then I can buy a beautiful silk dress made in Australia. Right? Because I
Yes.
realize how much I am going to spend, and then I'll wear that silk blouse, that silk, whatever it is, or the cotton or the linen or the wool, because those fabrics they're going to last longer.
Yes.
And also when it goes to recycle them, they have a better chance of actually being recycled and possibly reused. Whereas stuff with, yeah, go ahead.
No, my problem is the dopamine hit. I get a dopamine.
And it's real.
It is.
It's real.
It is, and I will fess up to it. I get a dopamine hit
Absolutely.
from shopping. I love shopping, but
that's great. And the dopamine hit is very, very real. And it's only over time that we start to realize not to trust that part of our brain and to retrain it to get a dopamine hit a different way.
Yeah.
Often that's where buyer's remorse comes from. It's because it's when the dopamine starts to decrease. Then we feel that, like, why did I do that?
Oh, I don't.
So like in physical retail, that's why they really make that transaction as fast as possible. So in a department store, if you're trying something on, immediately it's whisked and rung up because they want to make that transaction before your dopamine hit comes down, and then you have buyer's remorse, but it's too late because you're, in your car or on the bus going home. And so it's knowing that's happening and then seeing if you get that hit doing something else, but really small. Let's say you really like chocolate. Man, I have a serious chocolate habit.
Okay.
And so I choose to make my switch to fair trade or rainforest friendly chocolates. Very easy to do. It's a low cost change. Sometimes it's not even a cost increase. But I feel so happy buying that.
Yes.
Because I know I'm doing good.
Yes.
So I'm training my dopamine to get that rush. And and that lasts longer because I just feel good about it.
Of course.
Than the other type of real quick dopamine rush from buying, fast fashion or something easily accessible.
Easily
that maybe
accessible.
You're not gonna last.
Yes, yeah. and items that are easy to return as well. That's really important to me. If something doesn't fit properly, I don't keep it for the sake of the dopamine hit. I return it because I want to be able to wear everything that I purchase. But how do we know what goes on in those manufacturing places? Because I just said I shop at Zara. I don't know where the clothes are manufactured. I shop Temu and Shein. I know it's China. But how do we know where anything is manufactured? Because these days it seems like it's all manufactured in China.
Yes, it largely is. But there are other centers of manufacturing. And the reality is that most pieces are not manufactured in one country alone. So the
Hmm.
fabric may come from one country, the cotton that spun it's from one place. It could be cut and stitched in one country and then finished, particularly jeans are often travel 3 or 4 countries in their production cycle because one
Really?
country does this. Yeah, because there's expertise in washing, either in Mexico, sometimes in Dominican Republic and Pakistan. And then they might be
Wow.
stitched somewhere else at a lower
Yes.
cost place or a place that has the better skills,
Hmm.
and then finished in another country and then shipped. And so it is. It's a burden. It's not something that you can really easily crack as a consumer.
Hmm.
And so what are the things to look for?
Yes.
The top line marks are kind of like the gold standard is, has it been certified or is the company participating in any programs to ensure and to improve factory conditions for the workers? Looking for Fair Trade Association or Fair for Life or other types of certifications that say this has met standards where this was made.
Okay. Is that
And
on their website
it
usually?
should be actually on the product as well as on their website.
Okay.
Now, what's going to be on their website is a statement about how they're handling these types of products. At the far extreme, there is slavery. And in Australia, in California, and in the UK and other countries, companies must say if they're doing something to avoid it. So that's the first and easiest thing to check.
Okay. Okay.
And then you can check, well, are they participating in better factory processes? Are they um, do they have long-term relationships with suppliers? And
Hmm.
in my book, I give you a list of things to look for the websites. But the good news is you don't really have to do that anymore because
Hmm.
there are many apps and many ranking and ratings systems that you can just plug in and say, what is this brand like? My favorite one is an annual report that comes out by an organization called remake.world, remake.world.
Remake. Yep.
And they do a very deep dive into some of the major brands. And I know the quality of the research and the thoughtfulness with which it's done. And I also discover new brands by reading their work as well. It's like I've found quite a few interesting brands that way because I didn't know they existed. And if they
Yes.
rank well, they're worth
Yes.
taking a look at. And
Yes.
so I know there are similar types of research going on in Australia. So it's pretty the initial investment of time may feel steep because it's
Hmm.
new and you're not quite sure.
Mm.
But find a couple apps. I've got quite a few listed in the book, like Done Good and Done Good. I'm not sure if it covers Australia. It does the US and the UK. There are ethical reports that come out, but there's more and more information that enables you to quite quickly get a sense. And I always recommend understanding whose app or whose ranking and rating systems you're using. Why are they valid? Are they being paid by the brands? Remake doesn't take any money from the brands that they rank and rate and they discuss because you don't want that kind of
Yes.
torque
Yeah, that
potentially from the
bias
from the
as
incentive
well.
of potential bias creeping in. So you
Mm.
want to make sure that these systems you use are really valid,
Hmm.
but most they're pretty decent and it's a good starting point.
Hmm.
Just and it is maybe 15 minutes, half an hour a week, just kind of look around and take delight in discovering new brands.
Mm. Yes, I tend to keep going back to the ones that I know because I know they have the clothes that I like and they fit well. So it is a big investment of time to then go and search other industries, other companies that are going to offer you the same level of clothing without the sustainability issues. But can consumers make that difference? And have there been any companies that they've managed to create that change, that they've had an impact for the better with these companies?
Well, the change that we make, I look at it in 3 levels.
Mhm.
The first one is that you're living, if I make a choice to buy a t-shirt or a shirt, like the shirt I'm wearing that is sustainably made, I feel good about it.
By the
And I
way.
act in
Yeah.
alignment with my values. And I just feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a longer lasting contentment than the dopamine rush.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first level. The second level is other people watch what you do.
Mm.
So we like it or not, but we're sending signals all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and people catch on.
Mm-hmm.
And people often ask me like what I'm wearing, where I got it, and I can respond with pride that it's from this and this brand, and I chose it because of their environmental and worker standards. The third is you're no longer part of the problem and you're sending the right signals to the company through the marketplace. And that if you know enough people do the same, you're going to force the company, you're going to support the companies that are really making an investment in environmental and social performance. And you're going to decrease the growth and the power of those that aren't, and either force them eventually to innovate and change, or they'll leave the marketplace,
Mm.
right? And so you
Mm.
want to be part of that positive push. And over time, and I'll tell you a story about a different, not clothing, but tuna.
Yes.
So tuna back in the late 80s was known for the problem of catching dolphins in the nets
Mm-hmm.
and killing millions of dolphins.
Yes.
I was young. I was like all gung ho, coming back from Borneo. It's like, I want to be involved in this, environmental issues. And I volunteered for at a nonprofit, and I was very disappointed that I was given a desk job and not the job of going out on the fishing trolleys and shaking them up to write a consumer letter writing campaign. And I was like, oh, really?
No.
I'm gonna write letters? Like, how disappointing.
Yes.
But I did it anyway and, had fun and, whatever. But at the end of the summer, it's like, well, nothing really happened. I just wrote a lot of letters and like, like 2% people responded. Well, 18 months later, all major players in the tuna industry, it's a very consolidated industry, it's like three or four players, they all agreed. They made a joint announcement that they would only source from tuna fished by dolphin-friendly nets. And why? Because of consumer pressure. We had less
Mm.
than 2% of the marketplace.
Incredible.
So we know we can. Now, that's a couple decades ago. It made a huge shift. It was
Mm-hmm.
2%. And we know that thing is, we don't know what the tipping point is. So we don't know how much fair trade or labor friendly coffee needs to be purchased to tip all of the industry into ensuring farmers are treated well, right? We
I
don't
didn't,
know. Is it
yes.
10%, 20%? Is
Yes.
it, and right now it's about 8 or 9%, depending on who you include in that, maybe 11% maximum. So we're probably pretty close to a tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is exciting. Like, I want to be part of that group. Not only do I feel good when I drink my coffee in the morning, I know that people, well, coffee's a little more personal. People don't see that I drink that type of coffee, but if it ever comes up in conversation, and I know I'm helping push the entire industry by supporting the brands that have these practices.
I didn't even consider coffee. There is a massive consumption of coffee globally. So
Huge
are you
product, yeah.
talking about organically grown coffee is the way so people that are sourcing the beans that are organic, or are you talking about a particular place in the world? Are you talking about the workers or all of the above?
It's a little all of the above. So I coach people to choose one value at a time. So focus on people and then environment, or start with environment, and don't try to do it all at once. So I'm going to answer that question in the way that how I set my values. So
Great.
I'm most concerned about how people are treated, and
Yes.
environments as a very close second, but I always lead
Mm-hmm.
on labor issues simply because
Mm-hmm.
of my background and the folks that I've worked with during my career. So for me, buying a coffee that I know because it's either labeled fair trade or fair for life or Rainforest Alliance, Green Frog, or some other valid certification is my first call. Organic coffee and shade grown coffee. Shade grown is really great for the environment because it ensures more biodiversity and it's great for the
Mhm.
birds and it's better for lots of
Shade
things.
grown.
As shade, those two environmental standards are also important because they help the environment. And it is a loose proxy for decent labor conditions. Why? Because a company that's made the effort to ensure that the coffee they're buying has these environmental performance standards, they're probably going to also make sure the farmers are well paid or paid fairly. It's not 100%, but it's a decent proxy. And so if you
Hmm.
can't find the fair trade, or if indeed you value sustainability and environment primer, buying organic or shade grown is a really great way to ensure also, most likely, the farmers are probably paid better than conventional.
Mm.
And coffee growers around the world are tend to be way into poverty, like well below poverty lines. And so what they're paid per pound really matters.
I know that most of the coffee companies here in Australia do offer an organic option. It's not their sole option. Well, there may be a company or two that do have they are solely organic, but I know the company that my husband purchases his coffee from, they have an organic option. I hadn't even contemplated that that was a part of all of this discussion that we're having, something that we take for granted. And I suppose that there are many things that we take for granted when it comes to this discussion around sustainability. And I think what I'm hearing here is when we talk about core values, it's not only about sustainability, but it seems to be a metaphor for our lives and ensuring that how we spend our money aligns with our core values in our relationships, in our workplace, in all areas of our lives. Would you say that would be true?
Oh, completely. And fundamentally, when we're more aligned with, when we stay in alignment with what we value in all of our interactions, it's just easier. We're
Mm,
happier. There's less friction. We don't have to
mm,
tell ourselves stories and lies to get through the day. It's like, no, I actually, that's who I am and that's how I am. And
mm.
I really value the environment. So I'm going to make the effort and buy organic coffee. And if someone asks, well, I'll be glad to tell them, but I'm not going to preach at them, but I'm just going to
Yes,
share that with them.
yes,
And it's the
yes.
same thing. If I value fair treatment of workers, then I'm going to be really nice to my neighbors. Like, why wouldn't I be? Because it's the
Mm,
same value driving that. And as I
mm,
gave confidence in
mm.
expressing my values by my actions, then all of that just becomes easier.
Yes.
And I think 'cause it's building up that confidence, that reservoir, but for some reason we seem to lack as humans in being truly who I am, which is aligning ourselves with our values. As we build confidence, then we become more and more of that. And I think life just becomes easier.
I feel that I need to give myself a kick up the butt right now because I value people and that is, treat people well. It's one of my fundamental core values. And here I am. I don't even think about it when I drink my coffee. So I think what I'm learning is that I'm not doing as well as what I think I am. But one shift I have made recently was moving away from plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a massive. But what I learned was how unhealthy it was. That was the thing that really gave me the biggest nudge about the dangers in consuming water or foods from plastic containers. I went,
Yeah,
eh,
because of the microplastics. Yeah. So,
yes.
so something really important here, progress, not perfection, right?
Mm,
It's making one small change. And I
mm,
really argue one change a week or or just if that's too much, one change at a time. And
mhm.
start with the easy stuff, right? Start with a shift to, organic coffee and organic chocolate or, fair trade chocolate's so easy to change. There's a beautiful tool actually coming largely out of Australia called the chocolate scorecard. It's the easiest thing. Look up chocolate scorecard. It simply gives
Really?
you the brands globally, boom, you've got some new brands to take a look at. It's going to take you 15 minutes the first time you look at it to figure it out, to do the research on the brands. Boom, you've just opened up a whole new world of brands for chocolate. Super easy to make those changes, and just do the easy changes first and then tackle. Maybe in a month's time, do the kind of inventory of how much you spend on clothing and maybe start to think about doing it a little bit differently. But progress, not perfection. There's no perfect product out there. There's no perfect shopper. It's to the extent to which you arrive at who you are in an integrated way.
I love that. I love that. So my challenge is to start drinking organic coffee, and I'll let you know how I go. And
There you go.
the other one is to revise my budgets over the past 2 years, which are accessible, by the way. And I don't even think I want to look at those because it will scare me. However, I have improved because I have said to my husband over the last 2 months that I have enough clothes and I'm not buying any more clothes. I'm recycling the ones that I have in terms of look at what needs to be fixed. Do they need to be lengthened? Do they need to be shortened? Is there a zipper that needs replacing? And I'm doing that with my wardrobe at the moment. So maybe that is a good first step.
That's an excellent first step. I love the expression shop your own wardrobe, because we forget, like, that stuff in the back of the closet. I mean, most people, the 80-20 rule, the 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, just rotate things. And you've got tons of gems in there.
Yes, I set myself a challenge a few years ago. I was working at this particular workplace 3 days a week, and it was a school, and we had a 10-week term. So that's 30 days that I was working in that term, and I was not allowed to wear the same thing twice. And I got through the whole term without wearing anything twice. And I think that gives you an indication of how many clothes I have.
Yeah. And now you can refresh even from within your own wardrobe. It's a brilliant thing.
So what are the biggest myths or misunderstandings people have about ethical or sustainable shopping? Because I know there's a lot of news out there. There are a lot of tags that we look at, a lot of brands out there that we think we're doing the right thing in terms of sustainability. But what are the biggest myths and misunderstandings?
I think the biggest myth, and the one that does the most, it's the largest barrier for people, is that it's going to cost more.
Yes.
It's always the first. And there are products that will just cost more because, for example, recycled paper products will simply cost more than paper products and wood products sourced from virgin wood. It's just cheaper to cut down forests than it is to recycle paper products.
Wow.
So that is until we really get to scale and shift industries and have more innovation in recycling, it's just going to be more expensive. And I personally am always ready to pay the difference in the cost. But, many of the products are the same price. So let's go back to tuna. So tuna has a pretty heavy environmental footprint. Also has health implications around mercury, but I'll leave that aside for the moment. So right now, a tuna in the US, a can of tuna that is certified by the Marine Stewardship Council, which is a highly trusted certification process that says this fish was sustainably caught, meaning that they didn't take out too many fish. The fishing industry is done in a way that's going to help replenish the fishing stock and not drain it completely. So
right.
It costs on the same in a major retailer in the US, their own brand MSC certified tuna fish per ounce costs the same or less than conventional.
Wow.
So there's no price difference. If anything, you can even find it, depending on what you were buying before, you might even be saving a couple pennies per ounce. So that just, like that whole thing about it being more expensive, you really have to treat it food product or clothing item, product by product. I've made the case for chocolate because I think it's a luxury product and there's no reason that I would want to eat chocolate where I think there's been child labor in it. And so I'm willing to take the research and probably buy a little bit more expensive chocolate because that's so strongly part of my values. But
Mm.
it's not necessary. There are also many brands, particularly retail brands, again, if you look at the chocolate scorecard, you find them that aren't necessarily more expensive. And if they are more expensive in the relative number, let's say they're 10% more expensive, but 10% of a $5 chocolate bar isn't going to hurt most people's budgets,
Yes,
right? And so the
exactly.
absolute number isn't that big. But again, check your myth there on the cost. I think that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing I think you alluded to is around what we call greenwashing, which is deceitful marketing.
Yes, that was a
It is a big
term
issue.
you
Yeah,
used
it is
that
it
earlier.
yeah, so greenwashing means deceptive marketing. You'll find, for example, a plastic water bottle, which
Mm-hmm.
we've already said, not the greatest thing for the planet
Mm-hmm.
or your health. And you'll notice that almost the design is probably going to be in blue and it's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to have a nature scene on it because they
Mm-hmm.
want to indicate to you purity and
Mm-hmm.
that it's okay for the environment. And quite
Mm-hmm.
frankly, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is a form of false advertising. So anything that has kind of what I would call excess greenery or a lot for purity, the color blue, red flags.
Mm-hmm.
Also vague terms like environmentally friendly,
Yes.
natural.
Yes, they're all
They
very
mean
popular.
nothing.
Yes.
Natural means nothing.
No.
You can
No.
even argue that, synthetics came from a natural process of, fossil fuels. So disregard those very vague products,
Yeah.
sorry, not products, but words, and really look for the concrete evidence. So
Mm-hmm.
look at an app that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
Look for these certifications, as I mentioned, Marine Stewardship Council, MSC, Forest Stewardship Council, FFC. They all go by acronyms, of course. One of my favorites is the Rainforest Alliance Green Frog, Fair Trade, Fair for Life. All of these, and now we're getting more into regenerative agriculture as a certification process that is increasingly easy to find for meat products in the U.S. Organic, all of these things have very clear standards behind them that are checked. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can feel good about them.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
There may always be one or two cases a year where someone is found they haven't lived up to the standard. But I tell you, 95% of the time, maybe 99.9% of the time, they're delivering what they're saying they're delivering, and that's the way to go.
Yes. And you also emphasize that supporting women-owned businesses and local communities. Why is this so critical to sustainability?
It comes back again to your values. So I want to live in a community with a thriving local economy. I like independent shops. I think it's cool to
Mm,
pop into an independent bookstore
same.
and see what they've got, right? Well, they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be there unless I shop at them,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're not going to just exist if no one goes there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's again this kind of like shop in a way to create the world you want. Like if I want a thriving local community, if I want the little cute cafe and an actual baker, then I better be a frequent customer. Otherwise, they're not going to have the business to keep going. And I call out women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses in the book in the US context because these groups have a harder time getting capital. It's a
Mm-hmm.
fact.
Mm-hmm.
Data support these statements. And so therefore they tend to bootstrap. And so they have a really hard time growing. It also means that their cash flow is vital. So if you have a local cafe, right, in your neighborhood or where you frequently go on your way to work or something, so not a chain, not a franchise, but a real, what
Mm-hmm.
I would call mom
Mm-hmm.
and pop. If
Yes.
you go most mornings, you are up to 5% of what that coffee shop needs in that hour to be sustainable from a financial point of view.
Oh,
That's all.
amazing.
You're 5% of their
Amazing. Yes.
business because
Yes.
they only need, I mean, this is a real average number, so every case is going to be different, but on
Mm-hmm.
average, they
Mm-hmm.
need about 20 customers an hour. So if I make it my habit 3 times a week to go pick up my coffee at a mom and pop, I'm helping their bottom line in a very concrete way.
Yes, yes.
And the same thing applies at a slightly different scale for family-owned restaurants. And in many communities, these independent, locally owned businesses, they create a lot of jobs. They pay their tax money to your community. And they often traditionally provide a lot more support for school sports, local
Mm-hmm.
art.
Mm-hmm.
I love that our local coffee shop supports the river cleanup we do every year. They give back more to the community because
They
they're part
do.
of the community. And so this
Yes.
creates a really wonderful positive feedback loop. So the more you shop there, the more they give back to the community, the more tax dollars are allocated to your community, and you just get into this positive cycle of victorious growth rather than unwinding it the negative way. So you have all the big box stores at the at the edge of town.
Mm.
So again,
Uh,
it comes down to what you
yes.
value. And
Yes.
yeah, it takes more time to go to poke through a local shop. And sometimes the choice isn't as large as online. But it's what
Mm.
I come to, at the end of the day, what is it that I value? Where do I want to spend my money?
Mm. Where I go to visit in Melbourne, there's a street called High Street. And this street has been voted twice to be the coolest street in the world. And along this street, there's a lot of street art. There are a lot of arts and crafts, a lot of family-owned businesses. And one of them that I visit every day is a local cafe where mum and dad and the 5 children all work in the cafe. They all know everyone's names, everyone's coffee order. Even the kids greet you, and they're just teenagers and young teenagers as well. In fact, their oldest boy turned 17 the other day. And guess what he was doing on his birthday? He was working. And I said, "Oh, you're not doing anything special for your birthday?" "I'm working." And his mother said, "But you know what? We're all here as a family." And they don't get paid, but what they're being taught are some great values and work ethic and self-discipline. And I'm sure that they are paid hugely outside of financial gain. There's other benefits that I'm sure that they have that most children don't have. But those family values, those core values are just amazing. And then there's a Japanese restaurant where it's the father in the kitchen, the mother behind the bar, and the daughter who's about 17 waiting the tables.
And look at what delight that brings you, right?
Oh,
You just lit up talking about them. You
yeah,
love that.
I love
And
that.
and 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 I feel the same way. And
Mm,
so again, I make the effort and I'm willing to, yeah, maybe have a slightly smaller choice, whatever. It doesn't matter because that's what I love. I love walking into a coffee shop and it's like, hey, Diane, we got your whatever special coffee is or the way I like it.
mm,
That matters to me.
mhm.
And so therefore, that's where I want to spend my money.
Yes. So it's clear that for you, this isn't just a career. You light up as well. You still have that passion and that spark. What fuels that after 30 years of being this work?
I think it goes back to the rainforest and seeing those pieces of timber come down the river. That's not the world
Mm,
I want.
mm-hmm,
That's just not the world I want. And I think my mission in life is to prove robustly that shoppers, consumers, we can change the nature of the economy. We can change the shape of the economy by our shopping decisions
mm-hmm.
because we are the economy. We're not victims. It's not something outside of us. We are it. We're in the US, we're 69% of US GDP, which means what we buy drives almost 70% of all economic activity in the US. In
That's
Australia, it's a little bit
huge.
lower, but not much.
Yeah, that's
We
huge.
really are the economy, and
Mm,
where we shop drives that.
mm-hmm. You personally, doing this work, what's the greatest challenge that you've had to face in dedicating your life to sustainability, or even being in front of some of these Fortune 100 company personnel? What's the biggest obstacle or challenge for you?
In my earlier in my career, it was patience. I want to change now. It kind of goes back to my story about, the dolphins. I was impatient for change. I wanted to get them to stop now. Don't they understand? That kind of. Luckily, I have much more patience, and I see it's a long game. But I also know that we've made great progress, and early signs of environmental restoration really keeps me going, definitely. But my biggest barrier early was patience. And now it's finding my path to enable more shoppers to realize, more people to realize that they can shop with their values, and how to do that well. So I super appreciate being on this podcast. And that's my challenge right now, is how to get the information into the hands of the people that are looking for it.
So raising awareness.
Yeah, and then just it's like, I believe, and the reason I put the effort into writing a book was that people are interested in this information. At some level, there's a desire in many, many people to help create a world that aligns with the values, what the type of world they want. They don't want climate change. They don't want deforestation. They don't really want to buy stuff that kids have been, they don't want to put stuff on their face that comes from a mine with child labor. And so here are the tools, right? This is a recent phenomenon in humanity. We've only had global trade since the 70s. And so it's now we've had time to kind of catch our breath and develop these tools.
Yes.
So now it's the phase of getting them into the hands of those who want them.
And how do you hope your work inspires others, not just to shop differently, but to live more intentionally and create a better world for those around them?
I think my biggest wish is that people create careers that align with their values. I mean, corporate sustainability didn't exist when I started. I joke that there were 20 of us around the world that we all kind of kicked off about the same time. And it's to find what you're really passionate about and figure out how can I make a positive impact and make a livelihood out of it. And just because it doesn't exist now doesn't mean you can't go create it. In fact, it means you do need to go create it.
I love the language that you use, and I don't know if this is intentional. You've only talked about climate change a couple of times throughout this interview, but you keep using the word values. So is that a way of helping stop climate change? Is it just allowing people to realize if they shop with their values, then they can make an impact, rather than going, you are going to address climate change? Is it on purpose that you're talking about climate change in that way? Or
I think all of it, I think, yeah. I spent most of my career, as I said earlier on, particularly trying to convince people to do, quote unquote, the right thing. And behavioral science shows being told to do something is not going to be that effective. But then I realized, as humans, we tend to like nature, and we tend to want to treat people well. We don't wake up going, gee, I want to buy a product made by slaves. Or, gee, I want to make something that I know destroyed the rainforest, right? We don't do that. We generally like to show up in a positive and be a positive force in this experience of life. And it's like, oh, well, it's just an enabling, making that connection between the type of world I want, the type of life I want, and our impact as consumers, as shoppers. And it's putting those things together. And again,
I think it's very clever. It truly is, because you have me thinking in a way that I've never thought of before. And for those people out there who don't believe in climate change, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in it, and that's fine. But you talk about values, and I'm sure they're very big on their values.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will have values that take them into a different direction, right? And I'm not at all interested in trying to convince somebody to have different values, a set of values than what they have. I'm interested in enabling them in any way I can, but by providing information or what it is, so that they can live their values in all of their life, including in their spending power. So we have tremendous power as consumers.
Yes. In the time that you've been doing this work, what's been a positive change and what's been a detrimental change that you've witnessed?
In the environment, in the world?
Yes, in this discussion that we're having, if we can call it climate change, we can call it whatever you want to package it as, you know, to our environment, to people. What's an improvement or something that you've seen? You talked about the forest before, the reconstruction of the forest, I think, was that the word that you used? So what's a positive change that you've witnessed, and perhaps something that, wow, this is not going well at all. This is a detriment to our forest, to our sustainability as a world.
So I'm going to speak more at the global policy level because those are forces that are very powerful. So the positive is that companies realized, and their investors have realized, that particularly on the environmental efforts help the bottom line. There's eco-efficiency, meaning by using less, having less waste, using energy more thoughtfully, using renewables, which can save money. All of this is actually good for the financial structure of a company. And there are so many more benefits below the waterline. You know, we use the image of an iceberg, right? So those are the top, those are the values we see, but there's so many values and there's so many benefits to the companies that are being discovered. You know, it's employee morale and the ability to hire, all these types of values. So a very positive shift has been companies realizing that their environmental performance has direct financial positive impact, and also these other types of values.
Yes.
And that really propelled the drive for companies to report more and to share what they're doing more into the world, initially for investors.
Yes.
But that's exact information and that data that are being used in all those consumer apps I've been talking about. Because those consumer apps can't work unless they have the data and the information from the companies.
Yes.
And so it's been that drive that has brought us to a point now where we as shoppers can easily look up or say, hey, AI, what's this company doing on X? And that information is available. So kind of in a funny way, what was first set up as for the financial world and now regulatory requirements for providing information is becoming a tool for consumers to understand better what that company's doing. So it's kind of coming full circle, and I love that.
That is incredible.
And I think that's something I just, you know, my message to companies right now is that your voluntary reporting on environment and social, consider it consumer information, because that's eventually how it's going to be used. And if you don't put it out, you cannot be included in these ratings. And by the way, you're going to get bad scores for lack of transparency. Now, what's not so great is the current questioning of the value of these efforts within companies. And again, because we have the track record from the early 2000s that it can be and often is a bonus a
Mm.
good thing financially, that is being questioned in a way that I think is causing some pause, which is unnecessary.
Yes.
And the last thing that, as I understand the science, we need to accelerate our transition away from fossil fuels, not decelerate. And that is my biggest concern right now, is that forces not linked to financial realities and not linked to understanding the consequences are causing a deceleration of reducing, or they're causing an acceleration of greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow.
So that take it a bit meta, a little bit away from the shopper, but those are
No.
kind of big trends. But again, I just
Yes.
want to repeat that voluntary disclosure of environmental and social performance is basically consumer information, because of the cycle of how information is used for consumer focused apps, shopping apps.
Yes. So if consumers want to look into some of these companies that they purchase their goods from, their clothing, whatever it may be, there are now apps, there's information on the internet where there's full disclosure of their sustainability protocols.
Yeah, and their data, like what are their goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions? What are their goals for ensuring fair wages, living wage? Those whole definitions are tricky, but
Yes.
what are their
Yes.
goals and
Yes.
how are they meeting them? Because
Yes.
that's really important in the level that they're transparent. And that's what gets fed into these rankings and ratings that we can rely on as consumers. And
Yes.
also more and more, if you know specifically, like if you were shopping, it's like a major brand, let's just say Zara, and I do not know, I'm making this up, I do not know the
Yes.
outcome of what this would be, but I can say, hey, ChatGPT or Claude AI or whatever, what is Zara's goal on around quality of labor rights, or phrase it a couple of different ways and just see what happens. I'm really curious. But as that information is made available, then it ends up in the palm of our hands,
Yeah.
literally.
Yes.
So the world,
Yes.
it's shifting. Our ability to be citizen shoppers is increasing because the data is now more available.
Wow. You've given our listeners some amazing information and definitely food for thought. I know I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how can I do better? I preach that I have these values, I have these core values, and this is how I live my life. But I'm realizing now that I can do way better in terms of my shopping and the decisions I make at the checkout than what I have
One
been.
change a week, just one change a week. Don't go wholesale, just one change a week.
Yes,
That's all
yes,
you
small
need to do,
steps.
and feel really good about it.
I feel like you're giving a voice to the voiceless here. Some of those people working in those sweatshops, to our environment, to our trees, to our forests. Have you ever felt, though, through this process, that you didn't have a voice, that you were being unheard, that people were
Sure.
not listening? Can you give me an example of when that happened to you?
It's actually one of the reasons I did my PhD. I did have a burning question I wanted to answer, but I was also cognizant that as a young woman stepping into where I wanted to go, which is C-suites of major companies, having a PhD would broaden my shoulders.
Gave you the
So
creds.
gave me the creds. In the early
Yes.
days of this work, I was the lone female in those rooms. And so and often because I was the sectors I was working in life sciences and mining and things like that, it was kind of a male domain. And so it was very frequent that I felt I had to do something extra to have my voice heard simply because of those dynamics. But it's just a few small shifts and things have quickly evolved. I'm not alone in occasionally losing confidence or second questioning my thoughts. And it's just having the tools and the experience to figure out how to unlock that. And the more times I come through that where I regain my confidence in the moment, or I do a quick trick to feel better, then I get more confidence and it's positive and self-reinforcing.
Mm.
So it was big driver in my early career. And now still sometimes I just feel it's just kind of like bring myself back, remember why I'm doing it, the fears go away.
Mm-hmm. So you think that your why has always been your driving force, even though you felt at times you weren't being listened to, you felt that there was misogyny going on around you, but whatever it was, your why was your drive. So would you
Yeah,
then say,
absolutely.
yeah, so then would you say to someone, to a listener who's out there who's struggling to be heard, to go back to their why, or what piece of advice would you give them if they're feeling disempowered right now?
Definitely go back to your why. Go back to your purpose. It will always nourish you,
Mm-hmm.
always.
Mm-hmm.
And then develop a little toolkit for these moments because it's often in our brains, it's often in our mind. And our
Mm-hmm.
mind sometimes plays tricks on us.
It's a
So
liar.
find little tools, exactly. Find little tools and gain confidence by using them, the experience of shifting that. For some people it's breathing, for some people it's, doing a victory stand, whatever it is, I don't care. Jumping up and down, whatever it is to get you out of that negative self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
just keep practicing
Mm-hmm.
because I promise it gets easier.
Mm-hmm.
And, at this point in my life and this point in my career, I still fall back on them because minds aren't always our best friends.
I know we are compulsive liars. That's what I say. We're always lying to ourselves. We're going to wrap this up. Diane, you've been amazing. I've really enjoyed listening to everything that you've had to share with us, and I'm sure the listeners will have as well. And just the information and the wisdom, it's been mind-blowing, to be fair. I think you're going to create a shift in a lot of people's lives. So in wrapping this up, what does your ideal world look like?
My ideal world is when the goal is better jobs for more people, a restored environment, and thriving communities. Pretty simple.
Very
The way
simple.
to get there is that we tap into our values and we really harness our power as consumers.
So, organic coffee tomorrow morning.
There you go. Step
My
one.
start,
Yep.
step one. Diane, look, I'm going to let you go because we've had a very long discussion here, but I was fascinated by everything that you were saying, as I said earlier. So I want to thank you for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, and for making a difference. You get it, girl. That is incredible. Thank you. And we're going to share the links to you, to your website, to your book, and some of those other apps and websites that you told us about throughout the episode. But thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. We really appreciate you. We need more of you. We need more Dianes in the world.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine, I can tell you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Bye.
Bye-bye.